Well, to discuss this, I'm joined now in the studio by Ian Greenstreet, investment banker and chairman of Infinity Capital Partners. He's also an expert on emerging markets and is on the advisory board of the London Stock Exchange. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Can President Trump afford to ignore trade with Africa if he wants to make America economically great again?
So he most definitely can't afford to ignore Africa. In the last 5 years, Africa has grown by 3.3% per year. And one has to look at that in context. Of course, the oil-producing countries have contracted by 3.3%. And the Arab Spring Northern African countries have contracted by 4.8%. But Africa is still forecasted to grow, being the second fastest continent over the next 10 years. So most definitely. And secondly, and this is important, Africa will be the home to 1.1 billion people of working age. And that should be contrasted with 60% of the rest of the population of the world, and where that is an aging population. So Africa has potential.
So given all that, and we're just hearing there how China, and now Britain and France have passed the US as Africa's largest trading partners, why has America's trade record declined so dramatically in Africa?
So I think a lot of it is based upon historical trading relationships. So, you know, Africa exports to Europe an amount 10 times the amount that it exports to the US through the sort of equivalent of the AGOA agreement. And that's the first thing. But let's be very precise about this. The quotas that are put into place, they're what's called the tariff-free quotas. Below a certain threshold, they are zero. Above a certain threshold, you get penalized. So Africa pays 350% on tobacco and 29% on beef.
Right.
And those thresholds are very low.
And they're all raw materials that it's exporting.
Well, it's a variety of things.
Commodities,
yes,
basically.
It's agricultural produce. It's a variety of things.
Do you expect Mr. Trump to have a signature Africa trade policy? I mean, Bill Clinton had the Growth and Opportunity Act. President Obama had the Power Africa Initiative. What do you expect from Donald Trump?
Well, I have no expectations. I think that although I think that Africa might be in a good position by default. The reason is that President Trump has withdrawing from the TPP agreement and the TTIP. Now, those agreements cover 60% of the GDP of the world, and Africa is locked out of those agreements at the present. So we've just heard what President Trump has said literally 5 minutes ago, that things are going to be done on a bilateral basis, and this gives Africa an opportunity to effect a trade agreement which will be to the mutual benefit of both countries.
The problem, of course, is that American companies seem reluctant to do business in Africa because of that negative image that Africa has, and also the challenge of actually finding a conducive business environment on the continent. Electricity, infrastructure, transport links, telecommunications, all problems that people are faced with wanting to do business in Africa.
Understood, but China's faced with those same problems. Europe is faced with those same problems. And let's not forget, you know, you've got American companies like GE, Caterpillar, Cummins. They all do quite a lot of business in Africa. And even Gap and Target, they actually sourced some of their materials from Africa. So I don't necessarily think that that's...
So would you expect then, I mean, you're a business person, you're economist, you're across all of this, that someone like Mr. Trump, who is a businessman, would see the hidden opportunities in that crisis that Africa has with infrastructure and so on, which is essentially the way China sees it, which is what you were saying just now.
So I think if I were in his position, there's some quick wins. And as he's a businessman, he'll go for the quick wins. So for example, you know, we talked about the tariff-free quotas. You know, there's no mechanism for reallocating the quotas which are unused in other regions to Africa. I think he can do that straight away, and that can have an impact.
Okay. Ian Greenstreet, investment banker and chairman of Infinity Capital Partners, expert on emerging markets, and of course also on the advisory board of the London Stock Exchange. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Charles.